A man may possess the finest analytical mind in the world. He may have a system that is technically sound, but if he has not first conquered the powerful and primitive emotions that are his birthright, he is doomed to fail. Wall Street is a battlefield that is littered with the bones of brilliant men who were destroyed by their own human nature. This is an analysis of that internal battlefield. It is a clinical dissection of the great emotional traps that are responsible for the ruin of 99 out of every 100 men who attempt to make their living from the market. To understand these traps is to take the first and most critical step toward avoiding them. These are the unseen currents that pull a man off course, the psychological whirlpools that drag him down into the abyss of failure. They are subtle, powerful, and they are always waiting to exploit a moment of weakness or a lapse in discipline. The principles required to navigate these dangers were not learned in a classroom, but forged in the fires of immense, soul-crushing losses. They are the hard-won wisdom of a lifetime of study. Many of these timeless lessons, learned at the cost of millions of dollars, were masterfully chronicled by Edwin Lefebvre. A link to his essential work, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, now with a unique, detailed chapter-by-chapter analysis from Max Davidson, is left in the description below this video. This new analysis is specially designed to make the timeless wisdom of the book powerfully relevant to the modern reader. The speculator faces two primary emotional forces, two great and powerful deceivers that stand ready to sabotage his every sound judgment. These are his oldest and most intimate enemies, hope and fear. They are the twin assassins of a speculator's capital and his peace of mind. Hope is the siren song of the losing trade. It is the warm, soothing whisper in a man's ear when the tape is telling him a cold, hard truth. He enters a position and it moves against him. His analysis is proven wrong. His rules demand that he sell, but hope intervenes. Hope tells him it is only a temporary reaction. It will come back. Hold on. It is the most expensive and most dangerous word in the entire lexicon of a speculator. A trade that requires hope to be profitable is a trade that is already lost. Fear is the other great enemy. It is the saboteur of the winning trade. A speculator enters a position correctly, and it shows him a handsome profit. The trend is strong. The stock is acting right, and all the signs are bullish. But fear begins its work. Fear is the nervous, anxious feeling that the profit will disappear. It is the terror of watching a good gain turn into a small one, or even a loss. It screams at a man to take the profit and run, to secure the small, sure thing, rather than having the courage to sit tight for the great decisive move. The undisciplined speculator therefore finds himself in a perfect and diabolical trap of his own making. He is hopeful when he should be fearful, holding on to his losers, and he is fearful when he should be hopeful, cutting short his winners. His emotional responses are the exact inverse of what is required for success. But the emotional traps do not end there. A more subtle and perhaps even more dangerous set of psychological pressures emerges not from the daily fluctuations of the market, but from the speculator's own recent results. The emotions that follow a great victory are often more perilous than those that follow a defeat. A man who has just executed a great and successful campaign, who has made a vast fortune from a single brilliant insight, is in the most dangerous position of his career. He is a man who has been seduced by his own success. He is suffering from the intoxicating poison of hubris. He begins to feel infallible. He looks at his swollen bank account and sees it not as the result of a sound method applied correctly, but as the proof of his own inborn genius. He forgets that he is a humble student of the tape and begins to see himself as its master. This overconfidence, this arrogance, is the prelude to every great downfall. It is the mental state that causes a man to abandon the very rules and principles that made him successful in the first place. He begins to believe he is the exception, that the old, cautious rules are for lesser men. He will take on positions that are recklessly large. He will neglect his stop losses. He will begin to trade on his own feel for the market, on his own sense of his own genius, rather than on the cold, hard, impersonal facts of the tape. He is a man who is preparing his own financial grave. The other side of this coin is the emotional state that follows a great and painful loss. Here the enemy is not arrogance, but a desperate and emotional desire to win it back. The speculator has been wounded, both financially and psychologically. His ego has been bruised. He is no longer thinking about the market with the cool detachment of a scientist. His mind is consumed by a single, burning, and irrational need to make back the money he has lost, and to do it now. This is the desire for revenge against the market. This is the state of mind that leads to the most reckless and impulsive of all decisions. The trader will double his bet size. He will abandon his entry signals and begin to gamble on any small movement. He is no longer a speculator. He is a frantic gambler, throwing his remaining capital at the wheel in a desperate attempt to recoup his losses. The market does not care about a man's need for revenge. It will punish this emotional recklessness with the same impersonal efficiency with which it punished his previous arrogance. The desire to win it back quickly is the surest way to lose everything that remains. Jesse Livermore, throughout his long and turbulent career, was a man who experienced these emotional extremes in their most pure and most devastating forms. He made fortunes that were the stuff of legend, and he lost them with a speed that was equally breathtaking. He was a man who was forced, time and again, to confront the fact that his greatest enemy was not the manipulations of the insiders or the irrationality of the crowd. His greatest enemy was Jesse Livermore. He came to understand, with a clarity that was paid for with millions of dollars, that the great challenge of speculation is not in reading the market, but in reading oneself. It is a battle for self-mastery. He acknowledged that all his great failures were the result, not of a flawed analysis, but of a lapse in his own psychological discipline. He had allowed hope or fear or greed, or most often the intoxicating pride of a great success, to override his own proven, scientific rules of operation. It is from this deep and painful self-knowledge that his entire system for emotional control was forged. His rules were not just a set of technical guidelines for trading. They were a complete and total philosophy for the management of the human mind under conditions of extreme pressure. Let us then examine these rules, these great principles of emotional control that he learned at such a terrible cost. The first rule, the antidote to the impulsive desire for action, is this: one must never trade unless the market itself provides a clear and unambiguous signal. A speculator must not trade because he wants to trade, or because he needs to make money. He must trade only because the evidence of the tape tells him that the time is right. This requires the difficult and profound virtue of patience. He must be willing to sit in cash for days, for weeks, or even for months, waiting for the one perfect, high-probability opportunity to present itself at a pivotal point. This discipline of inaction is the great cure for the gambler's itch. It removes the speculator's own ego and desires from the entry decision. The decision is not his to make. It is the market's. His job is simply to wait for the signal, and then to act upon it with speed and decisiveness. It is in these moments of calculating risk and managing exposure that the true work of a speculator is done. The emotional desire to bet big on a promising idea is a powerful and ever-present enemy. It is the gambler's impulse, and it must be conquered. It is for this reason that a constant study of these first principles is not a luxury, but a necessity for survival. A return to this channel, to this video, and others, especially after a series of painful losses has clouded one's judgment, serves as a vital recalibration of the professional, unemotional mindset. The second rule of emotional control is the swift and merciless cutting of a loss. This is the great antidote to the poison of hope. A loss is the market's verdict that a judgment was wrong. The speculator must accept this verdict without argument. The stop loss is the pre-committed, unemotional decision to never allow a small error in judgment to grow into a catastrophic financial wound. It is the surgical removal of a mistake before it can metastasize. The man who can take a small loss with a sense of professional pride, who sees it not as a personal failure but as a successful execution of his risk management plan, is a man who has achieved a high degree of emotional control. The third rule is the principle of intellectual independence. The speculator must never, under any circumstances, trust in tips or in the opinions of other men. To do so is to surrender one's own mind, to become a second-hander in the game of thinking. The desire for a tip is an emotional weakness. It is a desire to avoid the hard work of analysis and the heavy burden of personal responsibility. The professional speculator is a lone wolf. He does his own thinking, he makes his own decisions, and he accepts the consequences. both good and bad. He knows that a man who trades on another's opinion does not truly know the reason for his trade, and therefore he will never know the right time to sell it. He is a blind man being led by another. The fourth great rule of emotional control is the mastery of patience, not just in waiting for an entry, but in the entire conduct of one's speculative life. This is the discipline of treating cash as a strategic position. The amateur is always invested, always at the mercy of the market's whims. The professional knows that the time to be in the market is rare, and the time to be out of it is common. This patience is the ultimate form of protection. It protects a man's capital from the whipsaws of a trendless market. It protects his mind from the emotional exhaustion of constant, low-stakes gambling. It preserves his strength for the one or two great campaigns of a year where a real fortune can be made. In the final analysis, all of these rules are components of a single, great, overarching principle. The control of one's emotions is the control of one's capital, and therefore, the control of one's own speculative destiny. A man can have the most brilliant analytical system in the world, but if he does not have the ironclad emotional discipline to execute that system without deviation, his system is worthless. The market will find his emotional weak point, and it will destroy him through it. The true strength of a great speculator is not the size of his intellect, but the quality of his character. It is the ability to remain cool, calm, and scientific in the face of both a great, intoxicating victory and a great, painful defeat. It is the ability to be a dispassionate observer of the facts, a servant of the tape, not a master of one's own ego. It is the understanding that the great battle is never against the market. It is always and only against oneself. The man who has, through a long and difficult process of self-education, conquered his own human nature, who has banished hope, fear, greed, and ego from his operational toolkit, is the man who has truly mastered the game. He is the complete and unemotional professional.